Sarah, along with her father Don, takes Maria to the hospital, and later events take us 20 years earlier. The family eats at the table and Sarah says she doesn't want to eat anymore. Don replies that everything in this house will be according to his rules and orders her to sit down. Sarah's mom Irina says she lets Sarah go for a walk, but Don is angry and says he is against it. At night, Sarah runs away from her father against her father's wishes. With my boyfriend Chris. When Irina knocks on Sark's door, Don breaks in and sees that Sarah has fled. Sarah is having a great time with Chris and he confesses his love to her. He composed a song for Sarah and plays it. On morning, Don is waiting for Sarah and when she returns he says that she broke his rules and now there will be problems. Sarah simply goes along with him, but Don stops her and holds her. Sarah rushes in and tells her mother that he's crazy. After Sarah comes her sister Annie. She says that soon Sarah will be 18 years old and she will just leave. Up to this point, she asks her to be obedient, but Sarah says that someone must fight him back because he wipes his feet on their mother. When Irina comes in, Sarah shares her dream. After she turns 18, she will move to Florida and then wants to visit different countries on the planet. Don hears all of this. He goes down to the basement and thinks, and after notices a hidden door behind which is a bunker. 3 months later, Sarah's graduation. Her mom goes to the store, and Sarah talks to Chris. Don asks her to help lower the crate into the basement. When they go down, Sarah asks permission to take a walk in the evening and her father allows. After lowering the box into the bunker, Don says that the previous owners built it in case of war. He quickly exits and locks Sarah in it. In the evening, Irina decides to call the police. The next day, Don comes down to Sarah and says that every action has consequences. If Sarah hadn't run away, none of this would have happened. He says that now everything will be only with his permission and Sarah agrees. Afterwards, Don lifts Sarah's skirt and rapes her. The next day, the police come to them and Don says that Sarah has already fled from them. He reveals that Sarah's belongings and her backpack are missing, hinting that she went to Florida, but Mom refuses to believe it. On the 7th day, Sarah sits with a bruised face and remembers a pleasant evening with Chris. At this time, Chris comes to Don and he says that Sarah fled to Florida with her neighbor Steve and Chris says that he remembers Sarah's stories about Florida. On day 21, Don brings Sarah's birthday cake. She is 18 years old. He demands her gratitude and gives her a gift, a red dress. He burns for Sarah to wear it and then asks what she wants. Sarah asks for freedom, but he says she needs to be served. Sarah asks for a simple watch and Don says that in return for something she has to give him something and rapes her again. On the 38th day, Sarah makes a kind of canned food weapon. She puts on a red dress and when Don arrives, he notices this and says Sarah is a fast learner. She attacks him, but he fights back and beats her up. A year later, Sarah is pregnant. Her water breaks. She gives birth to a child and names her Maria. When Don arrives, he says motherhood is great and asks Sarah to unpack the food bag. For years later, Sarah is pregnant again and Maria has already grown up. When Don arrives, she feeds him and Maria shows a drawing of Don and she calls him father. Sarah says no too late to give them freedom, but Don gets angry and asks just calmly give him to rest and eat. Later, Sarah's mom says she will keep fighting and wants to hire a detective, but Don won't let her spend any more on it. Money and says that she was already in Florida and did not find anything there. After a while, Don brings the TV to Sarah and they watch cartoons with Marie. In the 7th year, Michael was already born and growing, and Marie became ill. Don brings medicine, but it doesn't work for her and Sarah demands a doctor, to which he replies that this is her problem. Sarah later tells Mary's fairy tale, in which the main character is herself. Later, Chris visits Sarah again, but he meets Annie. They walk and Chris tells that Don called Steve's name and that Sarah went with him to Florida. Annie admits that there is no Steve and in general, her father scares her. She suspects that he did something bad to Sarah. At this moment, Maria begins to quarrel with Sarah, accusing her of not letting them go upstairs to the same children as she is, and Sarah puts her in a corner. Later, Sarah will come up with an interesting entertainment, showing the children as if they are in the jungle. That evening, Irina scolds Don for lying to Chris about Steve. and Annie accuses him of being something hides from them. When Don gets up, his keys fall out, and after Irina they leave with Don. Annie takes them and goes down to the basement. She starts looking for something, but Don stops her and says that he would be glad if she disappeared too. At this time, Sarah gives birth to another son. She calls him Thomas and asks Don to take him upstairs. He refuses, but Sarah says that this way she can spend more time with Don. Don puts the baby in the stroller and leaves it on the porch. When it finds Irina, she notices a note from Sarah, which says that she is alive and asks just to look after the baby until she and her husband get better position. Irina shows Thomas to Don and he notices that a piece of paper has fallen from him. He takes it and goes down to Sarah. It says that Sarah asks for help from her mother and says that she is in the basement. Don says that she never understood anything and again orders her to put on a red dress. In the 14th year, Mary shows Sarah and adult Michael a fairy tale about how Sarah will find her prince one day. When Maria comes down to them, shows him her makeup and he says that she is a beautiful and mature girl. Pregnant Sarah removes Maria from him and asks not to touch at least her. For such behavior, Don again turns off their light, and along with the light, the air supply is also turned off. In the 17th year, adult Thomas comes to his grandmother, asks what she does. Irina doesn't answer. She has prepared the room for Sarah's arrival and is still waiting for her. At this time, Maria notices water dripping from the ceiling and Sarah says that this might be their chance. She starts digging and one night she signals the street with a flashlight. She is noticed by a stranger with a dog. He wakes up Don and says that a strange light is coming from under their house. Don thanks and promises to check it out. He goes down to the basement and beats the pregnant Sarah. Later, Sarah's water breaks again and Maria does not know how to help her mother. She sits with her ears closed and hears Sarah crying. Later, when Don comes down, Sarah sits in front of the wrapped body of a child. Don picks him up and then they show him digging a hole. In the 18th year, when Don comes downstairs, he says that Thomas is great at baseball and Michael says that he wants to do this too, but Don replies that it all depends on their mom and Sarah agrees. Later, the kids blame Sarah for not even letting Don talk, but Sarah wants to protect them. She tells them to shut up and lashes out at things around them, and then again remembers a pleasant night with Chris. When the children put things in order, Sarah tells them the whole truth about the fact that Don is her father and Aunt Irina is her mother. Mary has an asthma attack. Later, Don comes in and brings food, and Sarah says that this is not enough. What does he replies that this is their problem and tells Sarah to clean herself up. Michael snaps at Don and rushes to fight, blaming him for everything. The next evening, Don is fired from work and he receives notifications about seizure of property. At night, he leads the hose into the ventilation of the basement and connects the other end to the car and starts the engine. The basement starts carbon monoxide flow. At this point, Thomas walks in and Don confesses to him that he made a mistake. But Thomas says that Grandpa will deal with everything and hugs him. Don goes down to the basement and sees how Maria is alive and sleeping peacefully. In the 20th year, Maria becomes ill again. At that moment, Don and his family are celebrating Thomas' victory in baseball. Michael is angry that Don promised to come to them after the match, but he comes only in the evening and Sarah asks to take Maria to the hospital. Don refuses to do so, not trusting Sarah, but Sarah says that if he loves Thomas, then Don will allow Maria to die, because she is also his child. As they go upstairs, Sarah spots her house for a moment, but Don launches her into the garage. When they arrive at the hospital, the doctors ask them about Maria, but Sarah is forced to remain silent and looks at her watch. When Don fills paper, Sarah deliberately touches a glass of water and he orders her to sit still, but she gets up and leaves. She sees a nurse next to a police officer and says she needs help. At this point, Don calmly turns around and leaves, but the policeman stops him and Don realizes that he has been caught. After Sarah tells Maria that they are free, and Don will be in prison for the rest of his days. At this moment from the basement they get Michael, who is practically suffocated. Irina is crying. The next day, Maria, Michael and Thomas spend time together. Maria says that someone came to her mother and she notices the grown-up Chris. They walk and Chris says that all the time he could not believe in the words of Don. He shows her a gift that he wanted to give back 20 years ago. Sarah puts on her pink helmet and they drive off on a motorcycle.